The NBA offseason is upon us, a time filled with the NBA draft, free agency, and where huge trades always happen. The rumors are already heating up. Players are already making demands, and I expect some crazy moves to be made. But in my opinion, I believe this offseason may be a little different. You see, early on in the year, the NBA announced a new CBA that has teams scrambling. You see, a lot of people are trying to downplay these NBA rules, but they are monumental and will have huge implications on how teams maneuver this offseason. To highlight the biggest talking points of these changes, the biggest one is the second apron. That's the one that everyone is worried about. That second tax apron only refers to teams that are $17.5 million over the luxury tax threshold. There are a plethora of things that teams won't be able to do if they go over this threshold. They won't be able to use their mid-level exception. They can't take back more salary than they are putting out in any trade. They can't trade picks that are 7 years out. And what may be the biggest thing for these teams, they cannot sign players who are brought out. These changes are pretty harsh. It means that picks will become more valuable. It means that we probably won't see as many crazy contracts to these mid-tier players, and overall just more strategy revolving around moves. Now, the CBA isn't coming into effect just yet, and it gives teams some cushion to make some moves. If the CBA were to be in place right now, the 6 teams that will be over the second tax apron are the Clippers, the Warriors, the Bucks, Celtics, Mavericks, and Suns. These are 6 teams that have aging stars, limited assets, and no money. So the best path for success for them is through the buyout market and using that mid-level exception. But like I said earlier, with that second tax apron, they wouldn't be able to do that. And it would really gut any chance of these teams making some real noise in the playoffs, considering their current team structures. To improve flexibility, some harsh moves are going to have to be made. They're going to have to find ways to shed cap. Shedding cap is something that teams do all the time. And the easiest way to do so is by trading a player on a big contract for another player on a big contract that is expiring or has less years. In some rather small situations, it could be a one-on-one deal with another team, but majority of the time, you're gonna have to add more assets, picks, young players to that big contract to entice others in trading another big contract that is expiring. These are some rare cases, and usually the teams that have those type of contracts are rebuilding teams. Maybe they have a vet that they paid a lot of money to, or some mid-tier players that they gave big contracts to in hopes of winning, but they weren't able to trade those players with those big contracts because teams didn't want to ruin their cap flexibility for these players. And ultimately, they sat on their bench for years and years and years, and now those contracts look more enticing. Like I said, the case of these contending teams to have these expiring contracts that they could look to move is rare. But there is one contending team out there with an expiring contract that teams that are right on the luxury tax line could look to trade for in hopes of creating some flexibility. If you haven't guessed it yet, this player is Tobias Harris. The 6'8" starting wing for the Philadelphia 76ers may just be the greatest trade asset this summer. Tobias Harris is 30 years old, and this upcoming season will be the last year of that lucrative $180 million extension that he signed in 2019. What makes any Tobias Harris move even better for a team looking to trade for him that Tobias is still a good player and he's more than serviceable. He can still have a big impact on a team looking to shed cap while still looking to be very competitive. This past NBA season, Tobias Harris averaged just a shade under 15 points and was very efficient, shooting 50% from the field, 39% from 3, and 87% from the free throw line. His frame gives any team looking to add him some added flexibility, and he's a legit floor spacer with some on-ball chops and is more than serviceable on defense, as we've seen in last year's playoffs and this year's playoffs. The Sixers have had some pretty embarrassing playoff exits over the years. It's time for change with Embiid growing antsy. Tobias' trade will be the first move in creating positive change for the team. There are a couple trades I have in mind that I think will not only make the Sixers better, but will help create some flexibility for teams looking to do so. The first team that immediately came to my mind revolving around the Tobias Harris trade was the Golden State Warriors. Like I said, they are one of the teams that if the CBA were in place, they would be above that second tax apron. After a disappointing playoff exit, the Warriors have expressed their desire to run it back. Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green are the big 3 of that team, and I don't think they want to lose any of them. Klay Thompson is extension eligible, Draymond Green is going to be a free agent, and with the new CBA coming into place, it's going to be very hard for them to keep both without trading one of their core pieces. And the one name that constantly comes up in trade talks is Jordan Poole. This year was very crazy for Jordan Poole. Obviously, there was a Draymond Green situation in the offseason, and he proceeded to have a good regular season, but really stunk it up in the playoffs. I really don't think he wants to be there as long as Draymond Green is there, and I don't think that's a situation that you can fix. So, in this trade package, we're going to ship him off to Philadelphia. In this deal, it's going to be Jordan Poole and Gary Payton II for Tobias Harris and picks. For the Golden State Warriors, Tobias Harris could plop in at that power forward spot, and you can run Draymond Green at the center, having that de facto depth lineup that you guys like to run. The Warriors really need to capitalize on floor spacing, as it's just going to open up so much for that offense. You improve the versatility in the lineup, the defense will get better as you're not starting Jordan Poole at the 2 and Klay Thompson at the 3. And this will be a good opportunity for Tobias Harris to excel in a new role as he's looking for a contract at the end of the 2024 season. To replenish the depth you lose in the 2-for-1 deal, there's Jonathan Kuminga, whose name has been floating around in trade rumors. He's a very young player, and you can use him as an asset to get more pieces on this team. For the Philadelphia 76ers, like I said, for Jordan Poole, this is a fresh new start. Things get a little weird in that guard spot because Jordan Poole and Tyrese Maxey both kind of do similar things, and they're not really playmakers. But with this trade, you can still bring back James Harden if you're the Sixers, have Jordan Poole be that sixth man for you, and then once James Harden time has come, you can move Jordan Poole to that lineup. And the hope is that by then, he or Tyrese Maxey will be much improved as playmakers and can run the point guard full time. You get younger, and it's an aggressive move that can help you get deeper into the playoffs. It's really simple as that. The next team that I want to talk about, and a team that can really use some flexibility, is the Atlanta Hawks. Aside from a recent Eastern Conference Finals run, the Hawks have been the definition of mediocrity since 2015. Their franchise guy is Trae Young, and there's a lot of scrutiny surrounding his name. The current roster they have just doesn't work, and they're going to have to make some changes if they want to be a contending team. The easiest way to do so is to shed cap, get rid of these players, and essentially start fresh. So, in this trade package that I put together, you're going to be trading away John Collins and Bogdan Bogdanovic for Tobias Harris. John Collins is someone whose name has been flown around trade rumors since the beginning of time, it seems like, and Bogdan Bogdanovic would just be an add-in. So, why would the Hawks do this? Well, the recently acquired DeJounte Murray will be a free agent at next season's end. Now, I expect him to resign with the Hawks on a lucrative deal, but what the Hawks can do is after shedding Bogdan Bogdanovic and John Collins' contracts, you're going to have a lot of cap space to make a big move next offseason. Pascal Siakam will be a free agent next season. Domantas Sabonis will be a free agent. Kristaps Porzingis, barring an extension this offseason, will be a free agent next offseason. And Jaylen Brown, considering how things could go with the Boston Celtics, might be a free agent as well. Getting off of John Collins and Bogdan Bogdanovic is the first move. You could look to also shed Clint Capella's contract, and then DeJounte Murray will be a free agent. You could make a splash, sign one of those 4 players, and then use your bird rights on DeJounte Murray to give him that max extension. After that, you'd still have DeAndre Hunter under contract. Jalen Johnson is someone who's made leaps in his game over the last couple of seasons. AJ Griffin was really good as a rookie, and he's expected to get a bigger role. You have the pieces, you're going to have some money. There's a lot of things that could be in play for this Atlanta Hawks team if they were to make this move. And then for the Sixers side, this is just replenishing your depth. Bogdan Bogdanovic will be a great bench piece for you, someone who's a near 20-point per game scorer at his peak. And then John Collins just needs a fresh start. He's only 25 years old and could do some big things with this Sixers team. You can get really creative with him on offense, and if you resign James Harden on top of making this trade, that's a great lob threat for him. At this point, all of this is just talk. The Sixers could very well just keep Tobias Harris, go into next season with basically the same team, and let him walk for nothing. But if you're Daryl Morey, who always wants to be one step ahead of the curve, is this really what you want to do? And another question that you guys might have is, okay, they make these moves. Now, how would that new CBA really affect them at that point? I don't think they're really going to be up against that tax apron with their current roster construction. Joel Embiid is under contract, yes, and Tyrese Maxey is going to be up for an extension, but I don't think he's going to get a crazy amount of money. That's your duo right there. And if all else fails, you just have those two and you get depth around those pieces. That's how the NBA wants majority of NBA teams to work. Daryl Morey is a very, very, very smart GM, so I think he'll be just fine trying to navigate around that second apron. All things considered, the Sixers have to do something, and these other teams have to do something. So this is definitely a trade, or at least a talking point that I could see heating up over the next few weeks.